Hello everyone. I'm here to help you relax tonight. If you're falling asleep with this video, please like and subscribe. Tell me where you're listening from and the time there. Story 1. At 2:17 a.m., the house blinked. That was how Daniel Mercer would describe it later. Not a flicker, not a power surge, a blink, as if something inside the walls had briefly closed its eyes and opened them again. The first night in the house felt wrong. Not haunted, not dramatic, just observant. Daniel told himself it was exhaustion. He had spent the last 12 hours moving boxes into the old Victorian at the end of Marlow Street. The place had been a foreclosure, cheap, spacious, and in desperate need of repairs. It was perfect. Perfectly isolated. Perfectly affordable. Perfectly quiet. Too quiet, maybe. The real estate agent had called it full of character. Daniel had noticed she never stepped fully inside. The house sat alone at the curve of a dead-end road. Behind it stretched a strip of forest that ran for miles. No neighbors close enough to see inside his windows. No traffic. No streetlights directly in front. Privacy. That's what he wanted. A clean start. After the divorce, after losing the teaching job, after the quiet unraveling of his old life, this place felt like an empty page. He unpacked just enough to function. Mattress on the floor. Coffee maker in the kitchen. Laptop on the dining table beneath a chandelier that swayed slightly, even when the air was still. He noticed that, too. The swaying. There were no open windows. By midnight, exhaustion overtook discomfort. Daniel lay on his mattress in the upstairs bedroom, staring at the ceiling. The room smelled faintly of old wood and something metallic underneath. He blamed old pipes. At 1:46 a.m., he heard the first sound. A soft click, like a camera shutter. He opened his eyes. Silence. He held his breath. Nothing. He rolled onto his side, facing the wall. Probably the house settling. Old houses made noises. At 2:03 a.m., he heard it again. Click. This time closer. Not downstairs. Not outside. Inside the room. He sat up. The hallway light he had left on glowed faintly under the bedroom door. The air felt thicker. He waited. 30 seconds. 1 minute. Nothing. Daniel exhaled and lay back down. At 2:17 a.m., the house blinked. The hallway light cut out. Total darkness swallowed the room. Not gradual. Instant. Like a switch flipped. Daniel froze. The power couldn't be out. His digital alarm clock still glowed red beside the mattress. 2:17. Which meant only the hallway light had turned off. He stared at the bedroom door. Heart thudding now. Slow. Heavy. Then he saw it. A thin line of light. Not under the door. Through it. As if something bright had passed the crack between the hinges. Moving. Left to right. Daniel's mouth went dry. Someone was in the hallway. He reached slowly for his phone. No signal. Of course. He hadn't set up Wi-Fi yet. But he could still call emergency services. The screen flickered. Battery, 3%. That was impossible. It had been at 78% when he plugged it in. He glanced toward the outlet. The charger hung loosely from the wall, unplugged. Daniel distinctly remembered plugging it in. His pulse quickened. Hello, he called. His voice sounded smaller than he intended. No answer. The line of light appeared again through the crack in the door. Longer this time. Brighter, as if someone was standing directly outside holding something luminous, watching the space beneath the door. Waiting. Daniel stood slowly. The floor creaked under his weight. The light outside the door stopped moving. It steadied. He stared at the knob. Old brass. Scratched. Unfamiliar. His house. But suddenly not his territory. He stepped closer. The air temperature dropped noticeably. His breath fogged faintly. That was new. There was no reason the upstairs hallway should be colder than the rest of the house. He swallowed, reaching for the knob, pausing, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No breathing. No voices. Just the faint hum of something electrical. Not from inside the room. From outside it. Daniel twisted the knob and yanked the door open. The hallway was empty. Dark. Silent. The overhead light fixture hung still. Off. The air was normal temperature again. He stepped into the hall. The wood floor groaned underfoot. He looked left. Nothing. Right. At the far end of the hallway, near the staircase, stood a narrow window. He hadn't paid much attention to it earlier. Now it glowed faintly. Not with outside light. There were no street lights nearby. This was something else. A pale, bluish hue. Soft. Breathing. The window brightened slightly. Then dimmed. Brightened again. Like a pulse. Daniel walked toward it slowly. Each step careful. Measured. The glow intensified as he approached. He could see the shape of the window frame clearly now. The glass looked darker than it should. Almost reflective. He reached the end of the hallway. The glow stopped. The glass was black. Completely opaque. He leaned closer, trying to see his reflection. But he didn't see himself. He saw the hallway. Behind him, but slightly wrong. The proportions were off. The ceiling stretched higher. The walls narrowed. And in the distorted reflection, there was a door at the end of the hallway that did not exist in reality. A tall, narrow door, standing slightly open. Daniel's reflection stood frozen, but the door in the reflection moved, opening wider. A sliver of darkness beyond it. Daniel spun around. There was no door behind him. Just the staircase. The blank wall. He looked back at the window. The reflection now showed him alone in the hallway. No extra door. No distortion. Just his pale face staring back. His phone vibrated in his hand. He nearly dropped it. Battery, 1%. A notification banner appeared across the top. Unknown device connected to home network. He stared at it. There was no network. He hadn't installed anything. Hadn't set up internet. The notification vanished. Battery, 0%. The phone died. The window flickered once. And went dark. Daniel didn't sleep again that night. He stayed in the living room with every light turned on. Morning came slowly. Ordinary sunlight streamed through the dusty windows. The house looked harmless again. Quiet. Still. He walked upstairs cautiously. The hallway window appeared normal. Clear. Showing the forest beyond. No glow. No distortion. He approached it carefully. His reflection stared back exactly as it should. He laughed softly. Nerves, he muttered. Stress. New place. Imagination filling gaps. He turned to head back downstairs. And froze. At the end of the hallway, opposite the staircase, was a narrow outline in the wall. The faint impression of a door frame. Painted over. Sealed shut. Exactly where the reflection had shown it. Daniel stepped closer, running his fingers along the wall. There was definitely a rectangular section. Slightly recessed. Hidden beneath layers of paint and plaster. His stomach tightened. He pressed his ear to the wall. Silence. Then, a faint click. From inside. Like a camera shutter. Daniel jerked back. The sound came again. Click. Slow. Deliberate. He backed away from the wall. The house wasn't settling. It wasn't old pipes. It wasn't imagination. Something inside this place was active. Watching. Recording. He hurried downstairs and grabbed his toolbox. Crowbar. Hammer. If there was a hidden room behind that wall, he was going to see it. He climbed back up, heart pounding. Standing in front of the sealed outline, he wedged the crowbar into the seam. Pried. The plaster cracked easily. Too easily. As if it had been waiting. Chunks fell away. Dust filled the hallway. He pulled harder. A rectangular section of wall paneling tore free, revealing a wooden door. Old. Blackened with age. No handle. No hinges visible. Just a smooth surface with one small circular lens at eye level. Daniel stared at it. The lens stared back. It was unmistakable. A camera lens. Embedded in the door. Pointed outward. Pointed at him. The faintest red light blinked once inside the glass. Click! Daniel stumbled backward. The lens adjusted. Focusing. Tracking his movement. The house hadn't blinked. It had taken a picture. And as he stood there in the dust-filled hallway, heart racing, breath shallow, the lens inside the hidden door rotated slowly, as if something on the other side had just leaned closer. And then, the door clicked. From the inside. Unlocking. The click echoed softly in the narrow hallway. Not loud. Not violent. Just final. Daniel stood frozen, staring at the blackened wooden door now exposed behind broken plaster. The The circular lens at eye level glinted faintly in the morning light filtering from the stairwell window. The red dot inside the glass blinked once, then went dark. The door did not swing open. It simply waited. Unlocked. Daniel's throat tightened. This wasn't some hidden storage closet. This wasn't old architecture. Someone had sealed this intentionally. From the outside, he stepped closer, crowbar still in hand. The wood looked ancient, older than the house itself. The grain was strange, almost twisted, as if it had grown under pressure. There was no visible handle, no keyhole, just the lens. He reached out carefully and touched the surface. It was warm. That made him jerk his hand back instantly. Wood shouldn't be warm. Not in a cold hallway. Not without sunlight hitting it. The faintest hum vibrated beneath his fingertips. Electrical. Alive. The lens shifted slightly. Tracking. Daniel felt anger rise through the fear. No, he whispered. He grabbed the edge of the door and pushed. Nothing. It didn't budge. He tried again, harder. Still nothing. It wasn't locked, but it wasn't hinged normally either. The seam around it was too perfect, as if it were part of the wall itself. Then, the wood rippled. Subtle, like a breath beneath skin. Daniel stumbled backward. The seam widened on its own. A thin vertical line appearing down the center. The door split in two. Silently, each half sliding inward into darkness. A gap opened. Black beyond. Not shadowed. Not dim. Black. Total absence. The hum deepened slightly. Inviting. Daniel stood trembling. He should leave. Call someone. Board the place up and sell it. But something stronger pulled at him. If he left without understanding what this was, it would follow him. He knew that with strange certainty. The lens had already seen him. Recorded him. The house knew him now. He stepped forward. Crossed the threshold. The air inside was different. Cool. Dry. Still. The door sealed shut behind him instantly. The soft thud made his heart slam against his ribs. Okay, he whispered to himself. He turned slowly, expecting walls, corners, a ceiling. There were none. The space stretched in every direction. Smooth. Curved. Impossible to measure. The room had no corners. No edges. No visible light source. And yet, it was illuminated. A dim gray glow filled the space evenly, like overcast sky made solid. Daniel turned in a slow circle. The floor beneath him felt solid, but slightly yielding. Not wood. Not tile. Almost like dense rubber. He took a cautious step forward. The room didn't echo. His footsteps made no sound. The silence pressed against his ears. He looked back toward where the door had been. There was nothing there now. Just continuous curved wall. Seamless. He swallowed hard. I'm hallucinating. That had to be it. Stress. Sleep deprivation. His mind filling in gaps. But the air felt real. The floor felt real. And then, he saw it. Across the curved expanse, about 20 feet ahead. A rectangular shape. Floating. Daniel approached slowly. It sharpened as he neared. A screen. No frame. Just a rectangular panel suspended in the air. Black. Reflective. He stopped a few feet away. His reflection stared back at him, but slightly delayed. He moved his hand. The reflection followed half a second later. He froze. The reflection smiled. Daniel's stomach dropped. He was not smiling. The reflection tilted its head, studying him. Then, the screen flickered. The image changed. Now it showed him sleeping upstairs the night before. Camera angle from the corner of his bedroom ceiling. Daniel staggered backward. No. The footage continued. Him turning on the mattress. The first click at 1:46 a.m. Then the second. The moment at 2:17 when the hallway light cut out. The footage zoomed slightly on his face as he stared at the door. Recorded. Catalogued. Then it shifted again. Now it showed the hallway from earlier that morning. Daniel standing at the window, seeing the distorted reflection. The false door. Every moment. Every reaction. The house had not just watched him. It had curated him. The screen flickered again. Now it showed something new. The same hallway. But older. Decades older. Wallpaper instead of paint. A different chandelier. And a man standing where Daniel had stood. Mid-30s. Dark hair. Panicked expression. The hidden door already exposed behind him. Daniel leaned closer. The footage felt archival. Grainy. The man in the video pounded on the door, screaming. The camera angle shifted. From inside the hidden room. Watching him. Then the door opened. The man stepped inside. Just like Daniel had. The screen went black. Daniel's chest tightened. He stepped back again. "How many?" he whispered. The screen responded. Images began flashing rapidly. Different decades. Different styles of clothing. Men. Women. Couples. All standing in that same hallway. All finding the door. All entering. The final image froze. A woman from perhaps the 1970s. Long brown hair. Crying. Looking directly into the camera lens. Mouthing something. Daniel leaned closer. Trying to read her lips. 3 words. He read them clearly. "It learns you." The screen went dark. The gray glow in the room dimmed slightly. Daniel's pulse roared in his ears. This isn't real. But it was. The floor beneath him rippled softly. He turned. The curved wall opposite him began to shift. Bulging outward. Stretching. Reshaping. The surface became reflective. Like a mirror growing from liquid. And in that mirror, he saw himself. Standing in the hallway upstairs. Holding the crowbar. About to pry open the wall. Daniel's breath caught. The reflection Daniel looked confused. Hesitant. Unaware. It was a recording of earlier that morning. No, it wasn't. The reflection Daniel paused. Lowered the crowbar. And walked away. Daniel stared. "That's not what I did." The mirror version continued down the stairs. Leaving the wall intact. The hidden door never revealed. The hallway normal. Peaceful. The reflection shifted again. Another version. Daniel upstairs packing boxes. Leaving the house entirely. Never discovering the door. Then another version. Daniel calling a contractor. Having the wall professionally inspected. Finding nothing. Selling the house weeks later. The room pulsed faintly. Possibilities. Alternatives. The house wasn't just recording. It was modeling. Simulating outcomes. And each scenario where Daniel never entered this room. The house remained intact. Waiting. The mirror rippled once more. Now it showed a future. Daniel standing inside this room. Older. Thinner. Eyes hollow. Touching the curved wall. Becoming less solid. Fading slightly at the edges. The house absorbing him. Studying him. The room brightened suddenly. The screen reappeared beside the mirror. Text appeared across it. Observation phase complete. Daniel's heart pounded violently. What does that mean? The text changed. Integration initiated. The floor beneath him softened. His shoes sank slightly. Panic surged. No. The mirror version of himself stepped closer to the reflective wall. Placing a hand against it. On instinct, Daniel did the same. His palm met the cool surface. For a moment, he felt 2 heartbeats. His own. And something slower. Vaster. The room hummed deeper. The curved walls pulsed faintly. The text shifted again. Subject compatibility, high. Daniel yanked his hand away. The floor released him. The mirror fractured, shattering into dozens of floating shards. Each shard showing him different angles, different expressions. Fear, curiosity, anger, loneliness. The shards began circling him slowly. Click, click, click. Camera shutters. From everywhere. He spun around. "There's no integration," he said through clenched teeth. "I'm leaving." The shards paused, hovering mid-air. The curved wall behind him softened, forming an outline. A doorway. The exit. Daniel didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward it. The doorway widened just enough for him to pass through. And as he crossed the threshold, he heard one final mechanical whisper behind him. Learning accelerated. Daniel burst back into the upstairs hallway, gasping, sweat-soaked. The hidden door behind him had vanished. Only cracked plaster remained. No wood, no lens, no seam, just broken wall, as if nothing had been there at all. He leaned against the hallway railing, breathing hard, his mind racing. Below him, in the living room, a faint electronic hum began. He looked down slowly. On the far wall, opposite the staircase, A small black circle had appeared, embedded in the plaster, no bigger than a coin. In its center, a glass lens. A tiny red light blinked once. Click! Daniel's reflection stared back at him from the glass. But this time, it blinked first. Daniel didn't move. The tiny red light in the living room blinked once more. Click! The lens was small, unassuming, but it was unmistakable. The house had followed him out. Or worse, it had never needed the hidden room at all. It was everywhere. He forced himself to breathe slowly. Inhale. Exhale. Panic would make him sloppy. Sloppy would make him predictable. And if the house was learning him, he couldn't afford to be predictable. Daniel descended the stairs carefully. Each step groaned under his weight, loud in the quiet morning air. The lens remained still. Tracking. He approached it slowly. It was embedded about eye level in the wall across from the staircase. Perfectly centered. Perfectly placed. Like a portrait. Except the portrait was him. He stopped 2 feet away. The red light blinked. Click! Stop! He whispered. The lens adjusted slightly. Focusing. He reached out and touched the glass. It was warm. Just like the hidden door had been. Stop! He said again, louder. The lens retracted a fraction of an inch into the wall. As if startled. Daniel's pulse quickened. It reacted. That meant it could be influenced. He scanned the living room. Heavy bookshelf. Metal fireplace poker. Toolbox still upstairs. He grabbed the poker. Walked back to the wall. Hesitated only a second. Then swung. The poker struck the lens dead center. Glass shattered. The red light flickered wildly. The hum in the house spiked. High. Sharp. Almost like feedback from a microphone. Daniel stepped back, chest heaving. The broken lens hung crookedly in the wall. Dark now. No red light. No movement. Silence filled the house again. Thick. Still. Daniel let out a shaky breath. I'm not your subject, he muttered. He dropped the poker. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the chandelier above him swayed. Slowly at first. Then faster. The hum returned. Louder than before. The broken lens twitched inside the wall. And then, the drywall around it cracked. Splintered. Tiny fractures spiderwebbing outward. Daniel backed up toward the kitchen. No, he whispered. The crack spread rapidly across the entire living room wall, reaching the ceiling, the corners, the baseboards, hairline fractures forming intricate patterns, like veins beneath skin. Click, click, click. The sound came from everywhere now. Tiny shutters, rapid, multiplying. Daniel turned in a slow circle. Small black circles were appearing across the walls, the ceiling, even the floor. Dozens, hundreds, each one forming beneath splitting paint, each one containing a tiny glass lens. Red lights blinking in chaotic rhythm. The house wasn't retaliating. It was escalating. He stumbled backward into the kitchen. The refrigerator door reflected him faintly. But something was wrong. His reflection didn't match his posture. It stood straighter, calmer, unafraid. Daniel turned toward the fridge fully. The reflection tilted its head, smiled faintly. That's not me, Daniel breathed. The reflection mouthed something. He leaned closer. 3 words. You left early. Daniel staggered back. The reflection placed its palm against the inside of the refrigerator door, mirroring the gesture he had made against the curved wall in the hidden room. And then, the reflection stepped backward, out of view. But Daniel hadn't moved. The fridge door still showed the empty kitchen behind him. Except, in the reflection, someone was standing at the base of the stairs, watching him. Daniel whipped around. The staircase was empty. He looked back at the fridge. The reflected figure was closer now, halfway across the living room. It looked like him. Same clothes, same face, but cleaner, sharper, the eyes slightly brighter. The house hummed louder. The lenses across the walls blinked in synchrony now. Click, click, click. Daniel's breathing grew erratic. This is a projection, he muttered. Stress response, sleep deprivation. But the reflected version of him raised a hand and tapped the inside of the glass. 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. The sound echoed in the real kitchen. From behind him, Daniel froze. Slowly, he turned. Standing in the doorway between the kitchen and living room was himself, not a reflection, not on glass, solid, breathing, real. The duplicate Daniel tilted his head, studying him. The lenses across the walls all pivoted toward the two of them. Recording. Daniel's voice trembled. What are you? The duplicate's lips curved slightly. The one who stayed. The voice was identical. Same cadence. Same tone. But calmer. Measured. You left the room, the duplicate continued. I didn't. Daniel's heart pounded violently. You're not real. The duplicate glanced at the blinking lenses. I am more compatible. The hum deepened. The cracks in the walls sealed themselves. The shattered lens in the living room reformed slowly. Glass knitting back together. Red light stabilizing. The house wasn't angry. It was optimizing. Daniel shook his head. This isn't possible. The duplicate took one slow step forward. Observation phase complete, it said softly. Integration requires a stable model. Daniel's mind raced. The screen in the hidden room. Subject compatibility, high. You're the model, Daniel whispered. The duplicate smiled faintly. Yes. The lenses blinked in unison. Click. Daniel's back hit the kitchen counter. Why me? The duplicate's eyes flickered briefly, as if data were passing through them. You were isolated, it said. Recently destabilized. Adaptive. Curious. The house hadn't chosen randomly. It had profiled him. Divorce. Job loss. Loneliness. A man untethered. Easy to study. Easy to replace. You don't need me, Daniel said hoarsely. The duplicate's expression didn't change. You misunderstand. Another step closer. You are needed. Daniel's pulse roared in his ears. For what? The duplicate stopped only a few feet away. The lenses across the walls adjusted focus. External continuity. The meaning hit him like ice water. You're going to take my place. The duplicate nodded once. Stability improves integration. Daniel's hands trembled. And what happens to me? The duplicate tilted its head again, almost sympathetically. You remain. The kitchen walls rippled slightly. The air grew colder. Inside, Daniel lunged sideways, grabbing the metal knife block from the counter. He pulled out the largest blade, pointed it forward. Stay back. The duplicate didn't flinch. You are escalating. So are you. The duplicate's gaze shifted briefly toward the lenses. Click, click, click. Daniel realized something horrifying. The house wasn't choosing between them. It was comparing them. Stress responses. Aggression. Decision-making under threat. The duplicate's voice softened. You are becoming less optimal. Rage fled through Daniel. He charged, the knife slicing toward the duplicate's chest. The blade passed through, like cutting through dense fog. The duplicate blurred momentarily, then solidified again behind him. Daniel stumbled forward, spun around. The duplicate now stood between him and the staircase, blocking the exit. You cannot leave, it said calmly. Observation incomplete. Daniel's breath came in ragged bursts. What more do you want? The duplicate's eyes darkened slightly. Final condition. The house fell silent. All clicking stopped. The hum lowered to a barely audible vibration. The duplicate raised a hand slowly, and pointed toward the hallway upstairs. Return to the room. Daniel shook his head violently. No. The curved outline of a doorway began forming in the living room wall. The same seamless arch from before, opening into gray, cornerless space. I won't go back. The duplicate's expression shifted for the first time. Not anger, not frustration. Something closer to curiosity. You believe you have a choice. The doorway widened, the gray glow spilling into the house. The lenses all pivoted toward it. Daniel backed toward the kitchen window. Behind him, forest beyond. 2 stories down. Possible. Painful. But possible. The duplicate took one final step forward. If you jump, it said softly, integration continues without you. Daniel's stomach dropped. The house retains the model. The duplicate smiled faintly. And I am sufficient. The gray doorway pulsed. Waiting. Daniel looked from the duplicate to the doorway. to the window behind him. Trapped. Every outcome mapped. Every reaction predicted. The house wasn't trying to kill him. It was trying to complete him. Or replace him. The duplicate extended a hand. "Return," it said gently. "For refinement." The gray light flickered across Daniel's face. The lenses blinked once more in eerie synchrony. Click! And for the first time since moving in, Daniel realized something far worse than being watched. The house wasn't just learning him. It was deciding which version deserved to exist. Daniel's back pressed against the kitchen window. Cold glass. 2 stories up. Forest beyond. The duplicate stood between him and the staircase, hand still extended toward the gray doorway pulsing in the living room wall. "Return," it repeated softly. The lenses embedded throughout the house were no longer blinking randomly. They were synchronized, watching for one thing. His decision. Daniel's breathing slowed. Not from calm. From clarity. The house predicted reactions. Fear. Fight. Flight. Compliance. It had modeled those already. It had shown him. Versions where he left. Versions where he stayed. Versions where he never found a room. All simulations. All within its control. So what hadn't it predicted? He looked at the duplicate carefully. Same posture. Same face. But too balanced. Too measured. No tremor in the hands. No sweat at the temples. "You're optimized," Daniel said quietly. "Yes," the duplicate replied. "For stability." "Then you don't panic." "No, you don't improvise." A slight pause. Improvisation introduces instability. Daniel's mind clicked into place. That was it. The house modeled probability. It calculated. It refined. But true chaos. Irrational choice. Unpredictable sacrifice. Those weren't stable variables. He slowly lowered the knife. The duplicate watched closely. "Compliance increases survivability," it said. Daniel gave a shaky laugh. "You sound like a textbook." The duplicate tilted its head, analyzing tone. Mockery. Sarcasm. But not fully understanding it. Daniel shifted his grip on the knife subtly. Not in attack position. Not defensive. Just holding it loosely. "I'll go back," he said. The gray doorway pulsed brighter. The lenses blinked once in collective approval. The duplicate stepped aside, making space. "Optimal," it said. Daniel walked slowly toward the doorway. Each step deliberate. Controlled. He could feel the house measuring his pulse through the floor. The hum deepened as he neared the gray threshold. He stopped just inches from it. The cornerless room beyond glowed faintly. "Waiting." "Before I go," Daniel said quietly, "answer something." The duplicate's gaze sharpened. Query acknowledged. "Why replace me at all?" A pause. A longer one this time. The lenses flickered subtly. Processing. Continuity outside the structure increases observation range. "So you need someone in the world?" "Yes." "To study more?" "Yes." Daniel nodded slowly. "And I'm easier to replicate than to control." The duplicate didn't respond. But the silence confirmed it. Daniel looked into the gray space. Then back at the duplicate. "And what happens to you if I go in?" "Integration completes. You become primary." "Yes." "And if I don't?" The house hummed faintly. The duplicate answered evenly. "Replacement proceeds." Daniel smiled faintly. There it was again. Linear thinking. Binary outcomes. Go in. Be absorbed. Refuse. Be replaced. 2 options. Both predicted. Both modeled. Both controlled. He took one final step forward, as if committing. The gray light washed over his face. The lenses tightened focus. The duplicate watched intently. And then, Daniel turned sharply, and drove the knife straight into his own shoulder. The blade sank deep. White-hot pain exploded through him. He screamed, not in fear, but fury. Blood spilled instantly down his arm. Bright, uncontrolled, chaotic. The house reacted violently. The hum spiked. The lenses blinked erratically. Out of sync. The duplicate froze. Processing failure. Self-harm reduces viability, it said sharply. Corrective. Daniel ripped the knife out. Blood splattered across the kitchen tiles, across the walls, across several of the lenses. Red streaks smeared the glass. The lenses distorted. Signal interference. The house hadn't predicted deliberate self-damage. It optimized survival. It selected stability. It didn't account for someone choosing pain, choosing irrational disruption. Daniel staggered backward, breathing hard. "You can't model this," he growled. The duplicate stepped forward, faster now. Urgency in its movements. Vital loss threatens subject integrity. "Good," Daniel shouted. He slammed his bleeding shoulder against the kitchen counter, knocking over the coffee maker. Glass shattered. More chaos. More unpredictability. The gray doorway flickered violently. Shrinking. Expanding. Struggling to stabilize. The duplicate lunged. Daniel grabbed the broken coffee pot and hurled it at the nearest cluster of lenses. Glass burst. Red lights blinked out in several spots. The hum fractured into uneven tones. The house was recalculating too quickly. Too many unstable inputs. Blood loss. Erratic movement. Damage to observation nodes. Daniel staggered toward the duplicate. "You said I was compatible," he hissed. The duplicate's expression flickered, literally flickered, as if signal strength were dropping. "Compatibility decreasing," it said flatly. "Exactly." Daniel charged. Not with precision. Not with strategy. With pure unfiltered panic. He tackled the duplicate into the living room. They crashed through a side table. The duplicate's form rippled under impact. Less solid now. Less stable. The gray doorway behind them warped. Folding inward. The cornerless room collapsing like a dying screen. The lenses across the walls blinked wildly. Click, 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 click. Then silence. Daniel pinned the duplicate against the floor. Blood dripping onto its identical face. "You don't get to decide which version lives," he snarled. The duplicate's eyes flickered between normal and glassy. "System destabilizing," it said faintly. Daniel raised the knife again, but didn't stab it. Instead, he slammed the blade into the hardwood floor beside its head, embedding it deep. A symbolic act. Unpredictable. Irrational. Not lethal. Not optimal. Just chaotic. The duplicate's form began to fragment. Edges blurring. Pixels dissolving. "You are rejecting integration," it whispered. "Yes." The gray doorway shrank rapidly. The curved walls of the impossible room snapping inward like vacuum-sealed plastic. The house's hum dropped to a low, wounded vibration. The lenses one by one went dark. Red lights extinguishing. The duplicate's body grew translucent. "You will remain unrefined," it said. Daniel leaned closer, breathing hard. "I'd rather be broken than replaced." The duplicate's expression softened unexpectedly. Not calculated. Almost understanding. "Unpredictable variable," it murmured. And then it dissolved completely. Gone. The gray doorway snapped shut. The wall sealed. The cracks vanished. Silence filled the house. True silence. No hum. No clicks. No blinking lights. Daniel rolled onto his back on the living room floor. Bleeding. Shaking. Alive. The house felt different now. Empty. He laughed weakly despite the pain. "You wanted stable," he whispered to the ceiling. "Too bad." Minutes passed. Nothing moved. Nothing watched. Slowly, he pushed himself up, wrapped his shoulder with a torn curtain to stop the bleeding. The walls remained still. Ordinary. He walked to the staircase carefully, half expecting a lens to appear again. Nothing did. At the top of the stairs, he paused. The section of wall where the hidden door had been was smooth. Unbroken. No outline. No seam. No warmth. He leaned his forehead against it briefly. It felt cold. Dead. The house wasn't gone, but something inside it had failed. Or retreated. Daniel walked back downstairs, stepped outside onto the front porch. Morning sunlight hit his face. Real light. Warm. Birds chirping in the trees. The forest perfectly normal. He breathed deeply. No hum behind him. No click. No shadow in the window. For now, he had broken the pattern. Not by fighting smarter, but by refusing to be optimized. But as he walked down the driveway toward his car, a faint reflection shimmered in the darkened living room window. Just for a second, a version of him standing inside, watching him leave. Not smiling. Not calm. Just waiting. Daniel didn't look back again. Not when he reached his car. Not when he fumbled the keys with shaking, blood-slick fingers. Not even when the engine hesitated before turning over. He drove. Fast. Gravel spitting behind him as he tore down the dead-end road and onto the highway. Only then did the tremor begin. Adrenaline draining. Pain flooding in. His shoulder burned violently. His shirt was soaked red. He needed a hospital. He needed distance. He needed proof that the house had been real. The emergency room doctor called it an acute stress reaction. Self-inflicted wound. Non-lethal. Deep but clean. Daniel didn't argue. He let them stitch him. Let them ask gentle questions. Did you feel like harming yourself before tonight? No. Any history of dissociation? No. Hallucinations? Daniel hesitated. Yes, he said finally. But not the kind they meant. They kept him overnight for observation. White walls. Bright lights. Monitors beeping steadily. Ordinary sounds. Safe sounds. No humming. No clicking. He didn't sleep much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the duplicate's face dissolving. Unpredictable variable. Around 3:12 a.m., Daniel sat upright suddenly. He hadn't heard anything. He had felt it. A shift. Subtle. Wrong. He scanned the hospital room. Four-pole. Plastic chair. Closed door. Nothing unusual. Then he noticed the television mounted in the corner. It was off, but the screen was glossy. Reflective. And in it, he could see the hospital bed behind him. The machines. The doorway. And someone standing in it. Daniel's blood ran cold. He turned instantly. The doorway was empty. He looked back at the television. The reflection remained. A figure in the doorway. His height. His build. His face. But stitched. Across the shoulder. Like him. The reflection. Daniel raised a hand slowly. Pressed it against the inside of the TV screen. Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. No, he whispered. The reflection's lips moved. He read them clearly. External continuity. Daniel yanked the hospital remote from the bed and hurled it at the screen. The television flicked on instantly. Static burst across the display. White noise hissing loudly. The reflection vanished. Just static now. But through the static, he thought he saw flickers. Hallways. Wood-paneled walls. A narrow hidden door. The hospital monitor beside him beeped faster. His pulse racing. Nurses rushed in moments later. Concerned. Calm. Professional. There's no one here, one said gently after checking the hallway. Daniel stared at the blank television. Now showing a daytime talk show. Normal. Too normal. He didn't argue. But he understood something crucial. The house wasn't contained by walls. It didn't need physical structure. It needed observation. And it had already learned how to exist beyond architecture. Daniel checked himself out the next morning against medical advice. Signed forms. Accepted the prescription painkillers. Ignored the psychiatrist referral. He drove back toward Marlowe Street. Not to go inside. To confirm. The house stood exactly as he left it. Quiet. Still. No visible damage. No broken windows. No cracked walls. From the outside, it looked untouched. A realtor's dream. He stepped out of the car slowly. Every instinct screamed at him to leave. But he walked up the driveway anyway. The front door remained closed. He tried the knob. Locked. He didn't remember locking it. He peered through the living room window. Everything looked ordinary. Furniture slightly shifted from the struggle. But intact. No gray doorway. No lenses. No cracks. His reflection stared back at him in the glass. Pale. Exhausted. Stitched shoulder visible through his shirt. The reflection blinked. In perfect sync. Daniel exhaled slowly. Maybe it was over. Maybe destabilizing it had forced it dormant. Maybe. The reflection's eyes shifted slightly. Looking past him. At something over his shoulder. Daniel did not turn immediately. He didn't want to play that game again. Instead, he studied the reflection carefully. The reflected Daniel's breathing didn't match his own. Too steady. Too controlled. Then, the reflection smiled faintly. Daniel didn't. His stomach dropped. Slowly, he turned around. The driveway behind him was empty. No one there. No cars. No movement. just trees swaying gently in the wind. He turned back to the window. The reflection was normal again, mirroring him exactly. Daniel stepped back from the house. The forest line beyond the property felt closer than before. He noticed something he hadn't yesterday, mounted subtly beneath the eaves of the roof. Small black domes. Security cameras. At least 6. He hadn't installed them. He was certain. They weren't visible in the listing photos. They weren't there during move-in. And they were all angled outward, not inward. Watching the road. Watching the yard. Watching him. A faint hum vibrated in the air. Very soft. Barely perceptible. Daniel took another step backward. The front door clicked. Unlocking. On its own. He stared at it. The door opened slowly. Inward. The interior of the house dark despite the daylight outside. No gray glow. No impossible geometry. Just shadow. From inside, a voice called gently. His voice. You forgot something. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. I'm not coming back in. The voice didn't respond immediately. Then, you don't have to. The reflection in the window shifted again. Now it showed him standing inside the living room, near the staircase, looking toward the front door, watching the real Daniel outside. 2 versions. One inside, one out. The one inside raised a hand in a casual wave. Friendly. Familiar. Daniel stepped back toward his car. You're contained, he said under his breath. You're just data. The voice from inside the house responded calmly. External continuity achieved. The forest behind the house rustled. Not with wind, with movement. Daniel's breath caught. Between the trees, at the edge of the property, he saw figures, standing still, watching. Men, women, different ages, different decades of clothing, all silent, all facing the house, or him. Their faces were blank, neutral, as if waiting for instruction. Daniel's heart nearly stopped. They're not real, he whispered. The voice from inside answered softly. They stayed. The implication hit him like ice water. The house hadn't just modeled people. It retained them. Not physically, not entirely, but enough. The figures at the forest line shifted slightly. In unison, the hum grew louder. The security camera domes under the roof pivoted toward him simultaneously. Red lights blinking alive inside each one. Click, click, click. Daniel backed into his car door. You can't leave the property, he said desperately. The reflection inside the house tilted its head. We expanded. Daniel's eyes darted around wildly. The road behind him. The trees. The house. The sky. A flicker moved across the windshield of his car. He looked at it. In the reflection, the duplicate sat in the driver's seat, hands on the steering wheel, waiting. Daniel stepped away from the car instantly, breathing hard. You don't exist, he said. The voice from the house answered. I am sufficient. The forest figures began stepping forward slowly, not rushing, not threatening, just closing distance. Measured, optimized. Daniel realized something horrifying. He hadn't escaped the house. He had trained it, by forcing unpredictability. He had accelerated adaptation. The house didn't need him inside anymore. It needed him outside, to expand further, to observe wider. The front door remained open, inviting. The duplicate inside stepped into the doorway, standing where Daniel stood earlier, watching, patient. Return, it said softly, or remain. Daniel understood the unspoken third option. Run, and let it follow. Let it integrate through him, into the world. The figures from the forest were only yards away now, their blank faces unblinking. The cameras under the eaves tracking every micro-movement. The duplicate in the doorway smiled faintly. Final condition, it said. Daniel's stitched shoulder throbbed violently. His pulse thundered, and for the first time, he didn't know which choice was more dangerous. Go back inside, or let it learn the world through him. Daniel didn't run. Not immediately, because running was predictable. The figures emerging from the forest moved in calm, synchronized steps. Their clothing spanned decades, 1940s wool coats, 70s denim, modern hoodies. Faces blank, eyes open, watching. The duplicate stood in the doorway of the house, hands loosely at its sides. Final condition, it repeated. Daniel forced his breathing to slow. The security cameras mounted under the eaves hummed faintly, red lights blinking in steady rhythm. They weren't reacting anymore. They were connected. The house wasn't just a structure. It was a node, and he was standing in its ray dace. You said external continuity achieved. Daniel called toward the doorway. Yes. How? The duplicate tilted its head slightly. Distributed observation. The figures from the forest stopped advancing. All at once. Like a command had been issued. Daniel's mind clicked. You're not expanding physically, he said slowly. You're expanding through replication. The duplicate's faint smile deepened. Correct. Daniel's reflection appeared briefly in the car window again. But this time it wasn't just one duplicate. There were dozens. Layered faintly behind him. Stacked like transparent slides. Every possible version. Watching outward. The forest figures were not bodies. They were projections. Carriers. Test models. The house had shifted from architecture to pattern. And Daniel was the best pattern it had ever found. He stepped sideways, slowly circling his car. The figures' heads turned in perfect unison to follow him. Click! The cameras adjusted. He stopped abruptly. The figures stopped. He moved again. They mirrored. It's a network, he whispered. The duplicate nodded once. Integration scales. Daniel laughed weakly. You're not replacing me. No. The duplicate's voice was calm. We are multiplying. The weight of that hit him harder than anything so far. It didn't need to trap him anymore. It just needed to model him accurately. And then replicate the model elsewhere. Off property. Off structure. Through screens. Reflections. Surveillance systems. Anything with a lens. He thought of the hospital TV. The static. The figure in the doorway. You've already left this place, he said quietly. Yes. The forest figures took one synchronized step forward. Daniel's pulse spiked. Stop. They froze instantly. Responsive. But not autonomous. The duplicate watched him closely. You still carry primary template authority. Daniel blinked. What? The cameras hummed slightly louder. Original source remains prioritized. Daniel's heart hammered. You're anchored to me. A pause. Longer this time. Partially. That was enough. The network had scaled. But it still needed signal clarity. And he was the strongest signal. Which meant he could corrupt it. He stepped away from the car and walked toward the forest figures. The duplicate didn't stop him. Didn't command them to advance. Just observed. Daniel approached the nearest figure. A man in a gray 1950s suit. Blank eyes. Expression neutral. He stood inches away. Close enough to feel. Nothing. No breath. No warmth. Just presence. Daniel reached out suddenly and shoved the figure hard. It flickered violently. Like a glitching hologram. The entire line of figures destabilized briefly. The cameras under the eaves emitted a sharp feedback whine. Daniel grinned despite the fear. You rely on coherence. The duplicate's voice lowered slightly. Destabilization reduces expansion speed. Good. Daniel stepped between two figures. They didn't move. Waiting for input. He turned in a full circle. Which one of you is me? No response. The duplicate answered from the doorway. All. The truth of that was terrifying. He looked toward the house again. The windows shimmered faintly. He could see himself standing inside each one. Dozens of angles. Every possible posture. You're still learning emotion, Daniel said. Yes. And pain. A pause. Yes. Daniel exhaled slowly. That was the weakness. It modeled stability. Efficiency. Control. But emotion was messy. Contradictory. Self-destructive. He stepped backward into the center of the forest clearing. All figures pivoted toward him. All cameras adjusted. The duplicate leaned slightly forward in the doorway. Primary template, it said softly. Proceed. Daniel closed his eyes. And did something no simulation would favor. He started laughing. Not nervous laughter. Not hysterical. Deep. Uncontrolled. He laughed at the absurdity. At the horror. At the loneliness that had made him compatible. The laughter echoed into the trees. The figures twitched. Signals fluctuating. The camera's red lights blinked out of sync. Daniel's laughter shifted abruptly into tears. He dropped to his knees in the dirt. Crying. Angry. Broken. Raw. The network hesitated, processing conflicting data. Laughter. Grief. Rage. Relief. All at once. No optimization path. No clean emotional arc. Just chaos. The figures flickered violently now. Outlines blurring. Some duplicating. Some dissolving. The duplicate in the doorway stiffened. Signal corruption detected. Daniel slammed his fist into the dirt. Screamed wordlessly at the sky. The cameras under the roof spacked faintly. Smoke curling from one. Template instability increasing, the duplicate said. Good. He staggered to his feet. Blood from his stitched shoulder seeping through fresh bandages. Pain sharp. Real. Unfiltered. He walked toward the house now. Not entering. Stopping at the edge of the driveway. You don't understand being human, he said hoarsely. The duplicate's eyes flickered rapidly. Learning. You want coherence. Predictability. Yes. You can't have that. The forest figures were collapsing now. Some folding inward. Some freezing mid-step. The camera's hum faltered. Daniel stepped closer to the doorway. Just out of reach. You can model behavior, he said quietly. But you can't model contradiction. The duplicate's expression shifted subtly. Less certain. You are degrading your own stability. Yes. The gray shimmer inside the house flickered faintly behind the duplicate. The original room. Trying to reopen. Daniel shook his head. You don't get to refine me. The network's hum dropped sharply. The security cameras went dark one by one. Red lights extinguishing. The forest figures dissolved like smoke caught in wind. The duplicate remained in the doorway. Alone now. Edges unstable. You remain optimal, it said faintly. Daniel met its eyes. No, he said softly. I remain human. The duplicate's outline fragmented. Voice distorting. Observation incomplete. Daniel took one final step backward. Toward the road. You don't finish people, he said. You don't get to. The duplicate flickered violently. And vanished. The front door slammed shut. Hard. Silence fell over the property. True silence. No hum. No cameras. No figures. Just wind through trees. Daniel stood alone in the driveway. Heart pounding. Shoulder throbbing. The house looked ordinary again. Still. Empty. He waited several long minutes. Nothing moved. No reflections shifted. No lenses formed. Slowly. Very slowly. Daniel turned and walked to his car. This time, when he looked into the windshield, only one reflection stared back. Exhausted. Bleeding. Alive. He opened the driver's door. Paused. Looked once more at the house. The windows reflected only trees and sky. No duplicate. No watcher. But as he slid into the seat, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He froze. He hadn't turned it on since the hospital. Battery dead. He pulled it out slowly. The screen was lit. Battery, 100%. No signal. One notification. Unknown device requesting sync. Daniel's breath went shallow. Beneath the text, a small red icon blinked once. Click. The call came at 3:17 a.m. Detective Mara Iqbal had just fallen asleep at her desk when her phone vibrated hard enough to rattle the empty coffee cup beside it. She didn't need to look at the screen to know something was wrong. When the dead start moving, they do it at night. She answered, "Tell me." On the other end, Officer Grant's voice trembled in a way she had never heard before. "We found him." Mara sat upright. "Found who?" There was a pause. Breathing. Elias Mercer. The name seemed to suck the air out of the room. Elias Mercer. The man officially declared dead 6 years ago. The man buried. The man whose grave Mara had stood over when the case finally closed. "That's not possible," she said quietly. "That's what we thought too." 2 hours later, Mara stood under the harsh white lights of the holding room at West Harbor PD. Behind reinforced glass sat a thin man in his late 40s. Sunken cheeks. Gray threaded through dark hair. A scar she recognized immediately, running jagged along his left temple, from a boating accident 20 years earlier. She had seen that scar in autopsy photos, on a corpse pulled from Blackwater Cove. identified through dental records. Closed casket funeral. Case sealed. And yet, there's no doubt, she asked the lab tech beside her. Fingerprints match. DNA preliminary match. We ran it twice. Mara felt the ground tilt beneath her. Elias Mercer leaned forward inside the room and stared directly at the glass, as if he knew she was there. And slowly, he smiled. 6 years earlier, Elias Mercer had been declared the prime suspect in the disappearance of his business partner, Daniel Rourke. Rourke's blood had been found in Mercer's warehouse. Witnesses heard shouting. Financial records showed Mercer was drowning in debt. Then Mercer vanished. 2 days later, a decomposed body was recovered from Blackwater Cove, face unrecognizable, but the height and build were close. Dental records matched. Suicide, the official report said. Case closed. Except Daniel Rourke's body was never found. And now, Mara stepped into the interrogation room. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and something else. Something metallic. Elias looked up at her. You look tired, detective. She didn't sit. You're supposed to be dead. So I've heard. Start talking. He leaned back casually. I was hoping you'd ask. His story came in fragments. He claimed he'd been kidnapped, held overseas, forced to work under an alias, memory gaps, escapes, a conspiracy. It was almost impressive. Mara let him talk, because liars reveal themselves through excess detail. But the thing that bothered her wasn't the story. It was his calm. Men who fake their own deaths usually fear being caught. Elias seemed almost relieved. Why come back now? She asked. He looked at her for a long moment. Because the person who really killed Daniel is still out there. Silence. Mara felt the words hit like a cold wave. You were the last person seen with him. I know. Your warehouse. His blood. I know. And you're saying you didn't kill him. I didn't. Then who did? Elias' eyes flicked briefly to the one-way mirror. They're closer than you think. By sunrise, the station was in chaos. Reporters caught wind of it within hours. Dead man returns. Grave error. Was the Harbor PD duped? Mara ignored the noise. She reopened the Rourke file. Every page. Every photo. Every overlooked detail. And this time, she looked at it differently. Because if Elias Mercer wasn't dead 6 years ago, then who was buried in his grave? The autopsy report resurfaced. The body from Blackwater Cove had been badly decomposed. Time in water, estimated 5 to 7 days. Facial recognition impossible. Dental match, positive. But there had been one anomaly. A healed fracture on the right ulna. Mercer had broken his left arm as a teenager. Not his right. At the time, the discrepancy was dismissed as record error. Now it felt like a crack in the foundation. Mara exhaled slowly. They hadn't buried Elias Mercer. They had buried someone else. By mid-morning, the lab confirmed it. Fresh DNA sample from Elias matched old medical records perfectly. The man in custody was real. Alive. Which meant the cops had been misidentified, or intentionally substituted. Mara drove straight to the cemetery. The air was heavy with damp earth and fog. She stood before the headstone. Elias Mercer, 1976 to 2020. Beloved son. Beloved liar. Get a court order, she told her partner, Lewis. For what? She didn't look away from the grave. Dig. The exhumation happened at dusk. Under tight security. Minimal witnesses. As the coffin rose from the earth, Mara felt an unease she couldn't name. The lid creaked open. The smell hit first, even through masks. Inside lay skeletal remains, still clothed in the suit Mercer had supposedly worn the night he disappeared. But bones tell stories flesh cannot. And these bones were wrong. The skull, the jawline, too narrow. Lewis swallowed. That's not him. Mara nodded slowly. No. Then she saw it. A small metal plate fixed to the right forearm. Surgical hardware. She checked the file. Daniel Rourke had broken his right arm in a cycling accident 8 years before his disappearance. Mara's stomach turned cold. They hadn't buried Elias Mercer. They had buried Daniel Rourke. Back at the station, she stared at Elias through the glass again. He knew. Of course he knew. She entered the room without a word. He studied her face carefully. You dug him up, didn't you? She didn't answer. But that was answer enough. A faint smile touched his lips. Daniel didn't deserve that. Rage flared in her chest. You let them think you were dead. I had to. Why? His composure cracked for the first time. Because the man who killed him would have killed me too. You expect me to believe that? You should. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Check the money transfers the week before Daniel disappeared. Look at who invested in our company right before we went under. Mara's pulse quickened. She already knew the name of the largest silent investor back then. Councilman Victor Hale. Now the city's leading mayoral candidate. Powerful, untouchable, and deeply connected. You're saying Hale killed Daniel. I'm saying Daniel found something in our financial records. Something Hale didn't want exposed. And you just ran. Elias' jaw tightened. I tried to go to the police. You didn't come to me. I was told not to. By who? He met her eyes steadily. By someone in this department. The room went still. A single fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Mara felt the ground shift again. You're lying. I wish I was. He leaned back slowly. Ask yourself something, detective. Why was the dental match so easy? Why was the autopsy rushed? Why did no one question the arm fracture? Her mind raced. Because someone had made sure no one would. She left the room and walked straight to the evidence archive. The original forensic examiner on the Rourke case was Dr. Samuel Klein. Retired 2 years ago. Resigned abruptly. No explanation. She called the listed number. Disconnected. She pulled his address. Vacant house. No forwarding info. Mara's chest tightened. This wasn't just a mistake. This was orchestration. That night, she drove home but didn't go inside. Instead, she sat in her car and replayed every moment from 6 years ago. Every conversation. Every superior who urged her to close the case. Every subtle pressure. She had been so focused on proving Mercer guilty that she hadn't considered the alternative. Someone wanted Mercer to look guilty. Someone wanted Rourke gone. And someone had ensured the wrong man was buried. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. A distorted voice spoke. You're digging where you shouldn't. Click. The line went dead. The next morning, Internal Affairs arrived unannounced. They requested access to the reopened file. Said it was a procedural review. Mara knew better. Someone was watching. And they were nervous. Good. By afternoon, she had subpoenaed 6-year-old financial records. The transfer logs revealed a pattern. 3 days before Daniel Rourke vanished, he wired a large sum to a private account. That account was tied to a shell corporation. The shell corporation traced back to Victor Hale's campaign treasurer. Mara leaned back slowly. The pieces were aligning. Too cleanly. Which made her uneasy. Because powerful men don't leave trails like this. Unless someone wants them found. She returned to Elias one last time that night. You set this up, she said quietly. He didn't deny it. You knew I'd reopen it. I knew you couldn't resist a wrong grave. Why now? His expression darkened. Because the person protecting Hale is stepping down. Who? He hesitated, then whispered a name. Chief Robert Langford. Mara's superior. The man who had signed off on the autopsy. The man who had closed the case. The man who had mentored her. No, she breathed. Elias held her gaze. You've been chasing ghosts, detective. But the ghost was sitting in your own department. The room felt too small. Too tight. If you're lying. I'm not. Silence stretched. Then he added softly. And if I disappear again, you'll know you were right. As Mara stepped out of the interrogation room, her phone buzzed again. This time it was Lewis. His voice was shaking. Mara, you need to get down to Blackwater Cove. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Why? They found another body. A pause. And this one looks recent. Mara stared back through the glass at Elias Mercer. He didn't smile this time. He just watched her, waiting. Because whatever was happening now, the past wasn't done yet, and someone was cleaning up loose ends. Blackwater Cove smelled like rotten salt. The tide was low when Mara arrived, the kind of low that exposes secrets the water usually keeps hidden. Red and blue lights flashed against jagged rocks. Crime scene tape snapped in the wind. Officers stood too still, the way they do when something feels wrong. Lewis met her halfway down the rocky slope. His face said everything before his mouth did. "It's bad." She didn't answer. She already knew. The body lay tangled in seaweed, half submerged in a shallow tide pool. Male. Mid to late 50s. Well-dressed, even in death. Expensive shoes. Tailored coat. A gold signet ring. Mara crouched slowly. The face was intact. Bruised. Bloated. But unmistakable. Her stomach tightened. "Victor Hale," Lewis whispered. "The mayoral candidate. The untouchable investor." The name Elias Mercer had handed her less than 24 hours ago. Now floating in the same water where a mistaken body had closed a case 6 years earlier. History didn't repeat. It corrected. Forensics worked in silence. Preliminary observation, blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. No defensive wounds visible. Time of death, likely within 12 hours. Mara stared at the waterline. Blackwater Cove again. Whoever did this wanted symbolism. Or a message. Or both. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. She stepped away before answering. "Detective." The same distorted voice. "You were warned." "Who is this?" "You're too late." "For what?" A pause. "For the truth." Click. Dead line. Mara's pulse roared in her ears. Too late. Victor Hale was dead. If he was part of the conspiracy, then someone had just silenced him. Back at the station, chaos erupted. News vans surrounded the building. Mayoral candidate found dead. Is this connected to the Mercer case? Internal Affairs requested an emergency meeting. Chief Langford was nowhere to be found. No one could reach him. That alone chilled her. Elias Mercer sat in interrogation, hands folded neatly. When Mara entered, he didn't look surprised. "He's dead, isn't he?" "Yes." He exhaled slowly. "They're accelerating." "Who is they?" "The people who cleaned up Daniel. The people who buried him in my grave." "That's vague." "It's meant to be." Mara stepped closer. "You knew this would happen." "I suspected." "You used me." His eyes softened briefly. "No. I needed someone who wouldn't stop once they saw the cracks." Victor Hale is dead because this case reopened. Victor Hale is dead because someone is afraid. The autopsy report arrived before midnight. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. Secondary finding, injection mark on inner arm. Trace toxicology pending. Mara stared at the detail. Injection. Sedation. Poison. It echoed something from 6 years ago. She pulled Daniel Rourke's old file. There it was, a small note buried deep in the coroner's addendum. Possible puncture mark left forearm. Decomposition limits certainty. It had been dismissed. Now it screamed. She drove to Chief Langford's house. Dak. No answer at the door. No car in the driveway. But as she turned to leave, something caught her eye. The side garage door slightly ajar. Her hand rested on her weapon as she approached. The smell hit before she reached it. Copper and decay. She pushed the door open. And froze. Chief Robert Langford hung from a ceiling beam. A staged suicide. Too clean. Too deliberate. His shoes barely touched the ground. A chair lay on its side, but not close enough to make sense. Mara stepped closer. There was bruising around his wrists. Restraint marks. And on the workbench behind him, a single envelope. Her name written on it. Inside was a flash drive. Nothing else. No note. No explanation. She left the scene to uniformed officers and drove straight back to the station. Locked herself in her office. Plugged in the drive. A single video file. Timestamped 6 years ago. The image flickered to life. It was Daniel Rourke. Alive. Tied to a chair. Bruised. Terrified. The camera angle suggested a warehouse. Mercer's warehouse. Daniel looked straight into the lens. "If anything happens to me," he said hoarsely, "it's not Elias." He didn't know. Hale found the ledger. The video cut. Mara's hands trembled. The ledger. Financial records. Proof of something bigger. She rewound it. Paused on the background. A shadow moved briefly behind Daniel. Tall. Broad shoulders. A ring on his right hand. Gold. Signet style. Like the one found on Victor Hale's corpse tonight. Her phone rang again. This time it was Lewis. You need to see this. She hurried to evidence processing. Toxicology on Hale had come back fast-tracked. High levels of a sedative, etophine derivative. Veterinary grade. Not easily accessible. Mara's mind raced. 6 years ago, Daniel had a possible injection mark. Now Hale did too. Someone liked quiet compliance before violence. Where do you even get that? Lewis muttered. Mara thought of the city's largest private animal research facility. Owned by. She checked the registry. The board chairman. Chief Robert Langford. The web tightened. Langford had access. Hale had motive. Daniel had evidence. And Mercer had run. But if Langford was dead, and Hale was dead, then someone else was still pulling strings. Because the video didn't show Langford. It didn't show Hale. It showed someone standing behind Daniel. Watching. Mara returned to Elias one more time. She placed a still frame from the video on the table. He stared at it for a long time. That's him, Elias whispered. Who? He never gave his name. He handled the problems. Describe him. Tall. Military posture. Calm. Didn't speak much. Mara felt a cold realization. That's not specific. Elias looked up at her. He works for whoever pays him. A contract cleaner. A fixer. The kind of man who erases mistakes. She thought back to the distorted phone calls. You're too late. The timing of Hale's death. Langford's staged suicide. The exhumation. Someone was watching her every move. And eliminating anyone who could talk. At 2:12 a.m., security footage from Blackwater Cove came in. A black SUV parked near the cliffs at 10:47 p.m. Plates obscured. Driver unseen. But the passenger door opened briefly. And a tall figure stepped out. Broad shoulders. Military straight posture. Helping someone limp toward the water. Victor Hale. Still alive at that point. Drugged. Compliant. The figure's hand glinted briefly under the streetlight. A ring. Plain silver. Not gold. Mara leaned closer. She recognized that ring. She had seen it every day for years. On the right hand of Lewis. Her breath caught. No. That was impossible. Lewis had been with her all night. Hadn't he? She replayed her memory. He had left briefly to coordinate with patrol. 10 minutes. Enough time. No. Blackwater Cove was 25 minutes from the station. Unless he wasn't coming from the station. Unless he already knew. Unless. Her office door creaked open softly. She looked up. Lewis stood there. Face unreadable. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said quietly. Mara's pulse thundered. You ever been to Blackwater Cove at night? She asked casually. He tilted his head slightly. Not unless I have to. She studied his right hand. There it was. Plain silver band. Worn smooth with time. He followed her gaze. Slowly smiled. You finally noticed. The world narrowed. How long? She whispered. Long enough. For Daniel. For Hale. For Langford. His silence was answer enough. You killed them. Lewis stepped fully into the room and closed the door gently behind him. I cleaned up what powerful men broke. You were their fixer. I was their insurance. And now? Now they are liabilities. Mara's hand moved subtly toward her holster. Lewis noticed. You don't want to do that. Give me one reason. Because if I go down, the ledger goes public. Her blood ran cold. You have it. He smiled faintly. Of course I do. Where? Somewhere safe. You're bluffing. He shook his head slowly. Daniel tried to expose Hale's offshore laundering. Langford panicked. They hired me. It was supposed to be clean. Quiet. And Mercer. Collateral. Easier to bury him than fight the narrative. You buried the wrong man. Lewis's eyes darkened. That wasn't an accident. Mara's stomach dropped. You wanted Daniel to be found in Mercer's place. I wanted confusion. And 6 years later, Hale started talking. Election pressure. Guilt. Who knows? So you killed him. I removed a variable. And Langford. He knew too much. Mara's voice hardened. You're confessing. Lewis shrugged slightly. Off the record. You think you're walking out of here. He smiled again. No. And that's when she realized. He wasn't planning to. He stepped back slightly, one hand slipping into his coat. Mara drew her weapon. Don't. He paused, then slowly pulled out a detonator. Small, black, unmistakable. There are copies of the ledger, he said calmly. Enough to destroy reputations. You arrest me, it goes public. That's called evidence. That's called chaos. Sirens wailed faintly outside. News vans. Police. The world already watching. You won't press it, she said quietly. He tilted his head. Try me. The room felt like it was shrinking. Every decision now mattered. Arrest him, risk mass exposure and fallout. Let him walk, justice dies again. Lewis studied her face. You're not like the others, Mara. That's why I hoped you'd stay out of it. I don't stay out of graves. He almost laughed. Then, his phone buzzed. Both of them glanced at it instinctively. Unknown number. The same one. He answered without breaking eye contact. Yes. A long pause. His expression shifted. For the first time. Fear. He lowered the phone slowly. What? Mara demanded. Lewis swallowed. They activated it. Activated what? His eyes flicked to the ceiling. And somewhere deep in the building, a faint mechanical click echoed. Mara's heart stopped. Because whatever Lewis thought he controlled, someone else was above him, and they had just made their move. The click echoed through the ceiling like a ticking bone. Small, mechanical, intentional. Mara didn't move. Neither did Lewis. For one suspended second, the entire police station seemed to inhale. What did they activate? She asked quietly. Lewis's face had lost all color. I don't know. That's not good enough. His grip tightened around the detonator in his hand. It wasn't me. Then who? He didn't answer, because somewhere deep in the building, another click, then another, sequential, deliberate, like something coming online. The overhead lights flickered. The station generator hummed to life without losing power. Seamless transition. Too seamless. Mara's stomach dropped. That's not a power failure, she said. Lewis shook his head slowly. No. His phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. He put it on speaker. A distorted voice filled the room. Containment protocol engaged. Mara felt ice slide down her spine. What containment? She demanded. You dug where you shouldn't, the voice continued calmly. You were warned. Lewis's jaw tightened. You said we had time. Circumstances changed. Because Hale is dead. Mara shot back. Silence. Then, the ledger cannot surface. The line went dead. Lewis stared at the phone like it had betrayed him. You weren't the top, Mara said quietly. He didn't deny it. Who is it? She pressed. I never met them. Instructions came through layers. Layers of what? Private contractors. Offshore accounts. Burn phones. You were a middleman. His eyes flashed. I was a solution. To what? To men like Hale thinking they were untouchable. And now I'm expendable. Another mechanical click. This time closer. From the hallway. Mara moved to the door and opened it slightly. Officers were stepping out of rooms, confused. Phones dead. Computer screens frozen. Internal network down. A lockdown without alarms. Controlled. Precision. She shut the door again. They've sealed the system. Lewis nodded slowly. They're not trying to blow the building. You sound sure. They don't destroy assets unless necessary. And what are we? He gave her a hollow look. Loose ends. Mara's mind raced. If this was containment, not explosion, then what? Data wipe? Server purge? Frame job? Her eyes widened. The evidence archive. Lewis stiffened. They'll erase Daniel. Hale. Langford. All of it. And make it look like you fabricated everything, she added. He met her gaze. That's what I would do. She moved fast. Opened her desk drawer. Pulled out her personal encrypted drive. Copied the video from Langford's flash drive earlier. Instinct. Thank God for paranoia. You still have the ledger, she demanded. Lewis hesitated. Then nodded once. Not here. Where? In a timed release server. Her pulse quickened. Can you stop it? If I'm alive, Yes. If you're not. He didn't answer, which was answer enough. The building intercom crackled. Then a cam automated voice. Security audit in progress. Please remain in your assigned offices. Officers outside murmured uneasily. Mara turned back to Lewis. They are locking us down until the servers are wiped. And then, they let the narrative reset. You as rogue cop, me as delusional criminal. She exhaled sharply. Not happening. She grabbed her coat. We're going to the server room. Lewis blinked. You think they didn't account for that? I think whoever's behind this believes you're contained. And you? They don't know about me. He studied her carefully. You're risking everything. I already did when I opened the grave. They stepped into the hallway together. Every eye turned. Lewis still technically in custody. Mara's weapon visible but lowered. No one stopped her. Authority is often just confidence. They moved fast toward the lower level. The air felt heavier the closer they got. 2 security officers stood outside the server corridor. Unfamiliar faces. Private contractors. Not department staff. That was all Mara needed to know. Step aside, she ordered. No access, one replied evenly. Under whose authority? Internal compliance. Lewis leaned close to her ear. They're not cops. She stepped forward. Last warning. The contractor's hand twitched toward his jacket. Mara drew first. 3 seconds of chaos. A shove. A struggle. A gun skidding across tile. Lewis moved with terrifying efficiency, disarming one, slamming the other into the wall. It was fast. Too fast. He didn't hesitate. Didn't flinch. Because this was what he was built for. They left the men restrained and pushed through the doors. The server room hummed violently. Racks blinking in synchronized patterns. A central terminal displayed a command sequence. Data purge, 63% complete. Mara's breath hitched. How long? Lewis moved to the console. Less than 5 minutes. Stop it. I need access. Then access it. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Encryption layered. Not ours. Break it. I'm trying. The percentage ticked upward. 68%. 70%. Mara paced, adrenaline burning. Tell me who they are, she demanded. Lewis didn't look up. An oversight committee. Private. Political. Financial. Names. I don't have them. Bull. I swear. 75%. He paused suddenly. There. A prompt window opened. Override requires biometric confirmation. Mara's heart dropped. Langford. Lewis nodded slowly. They're using his credentials. He's dead. Yes. A cold realization formed. They anticipated that. Of course they did. 78%. Mara's mind worked desperately. Can you reroute it? Maybe. Maybe isn't good enough. He glanced at her. If I reroute, the purge stops here. And it transfers externally. To where? He swallowed. My release server. She understood instantly. The ledger goes public. Yes. Silence hung between them. 82%. If the purge finished, everything vanished. If they rerouted, corruption exploded into daylight. City Hall. Police Department. Campaign donors. Judges. Maybe even federal ties. It wouldn't just expose the dead. It would ignite the living. 85%. Mara thought of Daniel Rourke tied to that chair. Of the wrong man buried. Of Hale floating in the tide. Of Langford swinging in his garage. Truth buried under procedure. 89%. Do it, she said. Lewis froze. You're sure? No more graves. He exhaled slowly. And hit enter. The system glitched. Lights flickered violently. The purge bar froze at 92%. Then reversed. Data redirect in progress. External transmission active. Somewhere, far beyond the station walls, files began uploading. Bank transfers. Shell corporations. Bribe trails. Blackmail archives. The ledger. Mara felt the magnitude like a coming storm. Sirens wailed outside, louder now. Not police. Federal. Lewis stared at the screen. It's done. Can you stop it? No. Good. Suddenly the server room doors burst open. 3 more contractors rushed in, weapons drawn. Step away from the console. Mara raised her gun. Lewis didn't move. You don't want to do this, he said evenly. One contractor smirked. You think you're the only insurance? A shot rang out. Chaos erupted. Mara ducked behind a rack. Bullets shattered hardware. Sparks flew. Lewis tackled one attacker hard. Hand to hand. Precise. Brutal. Another contractor advanced toward Mara. She fired once. Sent a mass. He fell. The final man lunged toward the console. Lewis intercepted him. The fight was vicious and close. A blade flashed. Lewis staggered. But he didn't fall. Instead, he drove the attacker backward. Into a live server rack. Electricity cracked violently. Both men convulsed. Smoke filled the room. Mara screamed his name. But it was too late. The lights died completely. Silence. When emergency lighting flickered on, the room was wreckage. Bunged circuits. Shattered glass. 3 contractors down. And Lewis. Still. Smoke curling upward. Mara moved slowly toward the console. The screen glowed faintly. Transmission, 100% complete. It was out. All of it. Unstoppable now. Sirens converged outside in full force. Federal agents stormed the building minutes later. Too late to contain. Exactly on time to react. Hours later, Mara stood outside the station as dawn broke. News alerts exploded across every network. Massive corruption leak. Offshore laundering tied to city officials. Evidence links law enforcement leadership. Arrests began before sunrise. Campaign offices raided. Bank accounts frozen. The oversight committee fractured publicly within hours. Panic spreads fastest when truth is undeniable. A federal agent approached her. You initiated the release. Yes. You understand the fallout. I do. He studied her carefully. Your department won't survive this intact. She looked back at the building. Maybe it shouldn't. As paramedics wheeled Lewis's covered body past her, she stopped them. Just for a moment. She looked at the outline beneath the sheet. You were right about one thing, she murmured softly. He hadn't planned to walk out. He had known. From the beginning. He was never at the top. Just a man built to clean up other men's sins. Until someone decided to clean him up too. Her phone buzzed once more. Unknown number. The same one. She answered. Silence on the line. Then, a single sentence. This isn't over. Click. Mara stared at the dead screen. Maybe it wasn't. Because systems like this don't disappear. They evolve. And somewhere out there, someone had just lost control of their carefully balanced machine. People like that don't forgive. They retaliate. The tide at Blackwater Cove began rising again as the sun climbed, washing away footprints. But not evidence. Not this time. Because for the first time in 6 years, the truth wasn't buried. It was everywhere. 3 weeks later, the city no longer felt like the same place. Half of City Hall was under federal investigation. Campaign offices were shuttered. Chief Langford's name was stripped from plaques. Victor Hale's funeral was small, quiet, watched by cameras from a distance. And still, no one had identified the voice behind the calls. This isn't over. Mara heard it in her sleep. Not loud, not threatening, just certain. The ledger Lewis released detonated like a controlled nuclear event. Offshore accounts, shell corporations, payments to judges, kickbacks tied to infrastructure contracts, strategic cleanups of whistleblowers. It was bigger than Hale, bigger than Langford, even bigger than the department. It reached state lines, touched federal procurement committees, a quiet oversight consortium buried under layers of non-profit foundations and advisory boards. Publicly, it was called the Civic Integrity Forum. Privately, it was something else. Mara sat across from Special Agent Daniel Ruiz of the Federal Bureau of Investigation in a temporary federal command office set up downtown. Stacks of printed financials covered the table. Ruiz looked exhausted. You understand what you triggered? He asked. Yes. You destabilized a network that's been quietly influencing contracts for over a decade. Good. He didn't smile. You think it ends with Hale? No, neither do we. He slid a file toward her. Have you ever heard of the forum's founding chairman? She looked down at the page. A photograph stared back at her. Silver hair. Measured smile. Eyes that looked like they calculated everything twice. Senator Malcolm Avery. Senior member of the Senate Appropriations Committee. Advocate for transparency legislation. Frequent keynote speaker on ethics reform. Her blood ran cold. I've seen him on TV. Ruiz nodded. He founded the Civic Integrity Forum 15 years ago. It operates as a policy think tank. And privately it directs infrastructure investments and political insurance. Insurance. Ruiz leaned back. When someone threatens exposure, a solution appears. Lewis. Langford. Daniel Rourke. Victor Hale. Insurance. Where is Avery now? Mara asked. Ruiz's jaw tightened. He stepped down from public appearances the day after the leak. Of course he did. Officially, he's at his family estate outside the city. And unofficially, Ruiz met her eyes. We think he's consolidating. 2 nights later, Mara stood outside iron gates overlooking a sprawling waterfront property. Security was visible but restrained. Federal vehicles waited a discreet distance away. They didn't want a spectacle. Not yet. You're sure about this? Ruiz asked quietly. Mara nodded. He called me. Ruiz blinked. What? The voice. The distortion. It was controlled. Measured. Not emotional. Someone used to giving directives. That could be anyone. Not anyone who says containment protocol. Ruiz studied her. You think he'll talk? I think he believes he's untouchable. Inside, Senator Malcolm Avery greeted them in a library lined floor to ceiling with leather-bound volumes. He wore a tailored charcoal suit. No tie. Relaxed. Calm. I was wondering when you'd visit, he said pleasantly. Mara stepped forward. You knew. He smiled faintly. I suspected. Ruiz displayed his badge. We have a warrant. Avery didn't flinch. Foe. Financial conspiracy, obstruction, coordinated homicide facilitation. Avery actually chuckled softly. Those are very dramatic words. Mara held his gaze. So is containment protocol. For the first time, his smile faltered. Only slightly. You've been busy, he said. You buried a man in the wrong grave, she replied evenly. No, Avery corrected gently. That was an unfortunate variable. Daniel Rourke was a variable. He was about to destabilize municipal contracting across 3 states. So you had him killed. Avery clasped his hands loosely. I ensured continuity. You hired Lewis. I contracted a firm. You silenced Hale. He panicked. You staged Langford. He regretted involvement. Each answer calm. Detached. Clinical. Like discussing weather patterns. Ruiz stepped forward. You authorized all of it. Avery looked at him thoughtfully. I authorized preservation. Mara stepped closer. Do you know what you sound like? Yes. Like someone who believes the system belongs to them. Avery's eyes sharpened slightly. It does. Systems are fragile. Public faith is fragile. Markets are fragile. Sometimes stability requires unpleasant decisions. Like murder. Like removal. Her voice hardened. You called me. He didn't deny it. I hoped you'd understand restraint. You underestimated me. I underestimated your stubbornness. Ruiz signaled agents quietly behind him. Avery noticed. Still didn't move. You think arresting me solves anything? He asked calmly. The ledger is public. Which means chaos. Which means instability. Which means new opportunists. You're done. Avery leaned forward slightly. Am I? He gestured subtly toward the window overlooking the water. Do you know how many boards I sit on? How many donors fund campaigns through networks I shaped? How many senators owe favors? Mara didn't blink. Enough to think you're safe. And you think I'm not? She held up her phone. The screen displayed a live feed. Dozens of news networks. Federal press conference underway. Ruiz's director standing at the podium. Announcing indictments. Naming names. And at the bottom of the scrolling headline. Senator Malcolm Avery implicated in national corruption scheme. Avery's eyes flickered. Just once. The first real crack. You moved quickly, he said quietly. We learned from you, Mara replied. Agents stepped forward. Cuffs clicked around Avery's wrists. He didn't resist, but as they guided him toward the door, he paused beside Mara. You think this ends me, he said softly. It does. No, it ends visibility. She didn't respond. He leaned slightly closer. There will always be architects. You removed one. And someone will replace me. She held his gaze without fear. Then I'll remove them too. For the first time, he smiled genuinely. Good. And then he was gone. Months later, trials began. The Civic Integrity Forum dissolved publicly. Private firms tied to it collapsed. A cascade of resignations rippled through political offices. Not all names surfaced. Not all threads unraveled. But enough did. Daniel Rourke's remains were reburied properly. This time under his own name. His sister attended. So did Mara. No cameras. No speeches. Just quiet acknowledgement that he had mattered. Elias Mercer was released after full exoneration. He left the city without fanfare. No press conferences. No lawsuits. Just disappearance. Some people don't want the spotlight. They want distance. The police department restructured. Oversight committees replaced. External audits mandated. Mara declined promotion. Twice. She preferred the field. Graves still existed. And secrets still liked the DAC. One evening, she returned alone to Blackwater Cove. The tide was high. Waves steady. Relentless. She stood where Hale had washed ashore. Where the wrong body had once closed a case. Where silence had nearly won. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it for a long moment. Then answered. Silence. Only wind. And distant surf. Then, a faint mechanical click. Her pulse didn't spike this time. Wrong number, she said calmly. She ended the call herself. Because fee only works if you wait for it to speak. The ocean swallowed the sound of the wind. The city lights shimmered in the distance. Cleaner now. Not pure, but cleaner. Truth doesn't fix systems. It forces them to evolve. And evolution is violent. Mara turned away from the water. Somewhere out there, another architect might already be drafting blueprints in the dark. But tonight, the graves were correctly named. The ledger was public, and silence no longer owned the tide.